Ah, the sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee, and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. And you know what you are to me? You're like my baby reindeer.
All right, watch out.
Or am I your baby reindeer?
Whoa. Did I have a cup of tea?
Oh, baby reindeer. Baby reindeer just can't get out of the news lately. It's a lot of chatter about it.
That was one I just kind of overlooked.
Right.
I'm not going to look at it. And the attention it's gotten from lawsuits filed made me want to see it. And so I watched it over the weekend, and it was so creepy. So creepy. I was like, oh no, I don't want this to happen. I don't want to be baby reindeer. If you're like me and you hadn't seen anything, it's about a stalker. This woman is stalking. He's a bartender / comedian. She comes in and he shows her kindness. And I don't know if that's the rule to this, is that if you show somebody kindness, they could take advantage and think it's something more. But then she starts stalking him, and she gets his email address, and she gets all these things that help her identify him, and she can contact him. And the guy doesn't know really what to do about it because he has no interest in her. He just was being nice to her. But just telling her to go away doesn't stop it. And then it escalates. And she comes to a comedy show that he does, and she laughs and becomes, and he sort of has a relationship with her, but it gets extremely intense. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had a situation like that where
No, I'm not interesting enough for me to have a person who follows me around. So I guess I'm lucky in that sense.
That's called children. The children are supposed to be that way, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's it's a really strange thing. Like I mean, I know people who have kind of had some obsessiveness around them, and I know people who are a little bit obsessive also, who kind of show up at things, and it gets you just kind of wonder what are you doing in your personal life. But it's a strange show. I don't know any other way to put it. It is such and the person who. So the show doesn't use any real names. It's kind of
the guy is real, but he's playing a character. Right. But it is something that happened in his life.
Correct. And the person who it's based on is now suing Netflix, for whatever, claiming that it's causing her harm or whatnot. I did see an interview very recently. I was just kind of looking the case up on kind of YouTube, and there was a clip of her with Piers Morgan appearing, and she denies ever sending like thousands upon thousands of emails. Now Piers didn't mention exactly how many she allegedly sent, but kind of made it seem like you kind of sent a lot of emails, if you kind of read between the lines kind of thing.
Right.
It would be nice to see, somebody release because apparently Netflix claims we vetted the story, we saw the emails, we saw everything. Yeah, this happened. So they feel like they're on really solid ground here.
Wouldn't you have the right to write a story, whether it's true or not, because it's a fictional show,
right?
And it's based on maybe your experiences, but I think a lot of writers write from experience.
Correct.
And they're creating these things. So the idea that she's saying that it's exactly her and she's being harassed, whatever, I think that's a leap that you don't need to make. I think it's a cry for money.
That's what it feels like, because there's obviously as I said, they don't name her in the show. It's they use fictionalized names. They've changed the situations. Obviously, internet sleuths being what internet sleuths do, they uncovered who that person likely was, and she was likely getting contacted and things to that nature. But at some point, if you know if his story is what it claims to be, and if Netflix is behind it and saying, yeah, we're allowed it, we vet this stuff and our legal team weighs in on it. If they're all good with it, it's kind of fair game. It's sort of, I mean, to a degree, it's journalism, right? I mean, that's you that's what we do in the media, is you report on things happening. It's just this is done in a different way. So it feels like fair game.
Yeah, people want to control every narrative that involves them. But whenever you step outside your house, you are, to use your term, fair game for anybody. They can take your picture when you're walking out on the street. They can do whatever as long as you're not being harmed in the process. But I think, he's a creator, right? And he did this as a fringe festival kind of thing. So he did like a one-man show where he tells his story. And how many times do we see that? I mean, Billy Crystal's made a lifetime out of that, just telling his story. And I think that Fleabag, she did a one-woman show where she told a story. Was it her story? We don't know. But you should have the right to tell a story. For you to make the leap that it is your story might be just a little too far. But it gets creepier. How far? You've gotten 2 in?
Yeah, I'm 2. Maybe I may be partially into the 3rd now. I can't remember where I left off. It's not a long series. It's only 6 episodes or so.
7. It's 7 episodes,
yeah.
And they're like less than an hour each. You find out more about him, about his past, and you find out about some situations that are don't let the kids watch. And then it comes to a conclusion of sorts. It does. But it's one of those things that you think, I think it's what would I do in this situation if this were happening to me? Because he learns, like, maybe some of the things he does he shouldn't have done because it tips in her hand. And when you hear the police talk about this, it's fascinating. It's a typical podcast subject.
Yeah, it is kind of a true crimey thing. It's weird, but it's also, the reason I bring it up is that the Television Critics Association, they have their upcoming TCA Awards. You are a member of the.
I'm a member, and they went, well, I did not nominate it, so it's not me.
But it's there. It's a Program of the Year, Outstanding Achievement in Drama, Outstanding Achievement in Movies, Miniseries, or Specials, Outstanding New Program, Achievement for Richard Gadd. I mean, it's just, the list goes on here. I mean, it is. It's like one of the top. I mean, and it's up there with shows like that we've been talking about too, like Fargo and True Detective and Shogun. I mean, it's not just, this isn't some like cheeseball award type of thing where they're throwing it out there. I mean, it's up against some heavy hitters we've spoken about.
And so who knows what this kind of extra attention will do, because I think there were a lot of good dramas that we had during the last year, and to get that many nods in so many categories is pretty unprecedented for at least for these kinds of awards. But we'll see how well it does. Interestingly, it follows his own career very closely, and you think, wow, is this what other people need to do, is just really open a vein and tell all? I was trying to cast it as if we did a movie. And I thought Melissa McCarthy would play the stalker and Adam Driver would be the guy. Wouldn't they be interesting if you did it as a movie?
Yeah, there you go.
There's a sense of, if you remember the movie Misery,
right?
The sense of that too. Hey, Mr. Man, you're not getting away from me. So I think that does play with people. They go, oh my God, what would I do in this situation?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it does make you wonder too. I mean, he obviously, this happened to him, allegedly. It happened to him, when at a time in his life where he wasn't really famous. But if you think about the musicians and actors and actresses and all these people who are very, very prominent, and they have to deal with people who try to insert themselves into their lives on a daily basis, and what they have to go, and you wonder why, like, you'll have those incidents where an actor might, push the camera from paparazzi away or get overly protective of their lives, because it's just at some point, yeah, you're a celebrity and you're inserting yourself into the public life, but at the same time, you're entitled to some level of privacy. You should be able to, like, live within your home and not have to worry about people hopping over your fence. And you look at being able to just go out and to the street and or go to a restaurant, eat a meal. You look, like, you hear these things like, I think, didn't Taylor Swift go to New York and she bought out the whole restaurant so there wouldn't be other guests there leering?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's such a strange, is such a strange thing. And then for somebody like Richard Gadd, who's not a well-known, I mean, even now, it's not like he's this super well-known comedian. He's not like Billy Crystal. He's not Jerry Seinfeld. He's maybe at some point he will be, but he's a relative, I don't want to say newcomer, but he's
Yeah.
not quite at that level. And so to have to go through that, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it's one thing to be able to afford to deal with it if you're rich enough that you can keep security guards and, ways to keep them away. Because that's the way all those musicians are. They know that there is going to be an interest in them post-concert. And so they've got it all built in. But if you're kind of an aspiring person, and there were examples of this, there was a young woman who was on a sitcom who had one like this, and he killed her. So there are examples of, how close can you get? The thing I don't understand, and maybe it's because I get to interview people all the time, but I don't get the obsession. I don't know that there would be anybody, and I'm not trying to downplay what they do, but anybody that I would be so obsessed with that I had to know everything I could about them. And it's probably because of the profession we're in. It's hit and run. But that's the thing that I wonder, what is it that sparks it? Do they think that there is some vulnerability in this person that would allow them to succeed with that person? That's what David Binder gets me thinking. Because, if he were a really successful comedian, there would have been somebody there to kind of push her away and say, sorry.
Right. And he probably wouldn't have been bartending also.
Right.
Right.
Wouldn't have a place to go see him.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been a different, but yeah, the actress you speak of, Rebecca Schaefer, she was on My Sister Sam, and was tragically killed when I think she was only around 21, 22 years old at the time. Somebody who was obsessed with her, and I think it followed her back to her apartment. But yeah, it's scary, and you can see why actors, celebrities, musicians, athletes just, they want to keep you at arm's length away.
Yeah, and sometimes maybe it's good.
Ah, the sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously interacted with celebrities more than I have, but I think a lot of celebrities are less interesting than we think they are. I imagine a lot of them, they've got money and you can do whatever you want when you have money. But I think a lot of them, they're homebodies. They're not good at cooking, or they just have weird hobbies.
Without somebody writing for them, they're not that interesting.
Right.
They don't have somebody coming up with a script that makes them sound witty or sound like they're on Friends or whatever it might be. But they also, if you talk to them about things that you're interested in, they could well be interested in the same thing too. I interviewed a lot of rap stars in my life, and rap, is this me? This is like so me.
Right. Hip hoppers.
I have no interest in their field of work, but I have interviewed them. And when you start talking to me, you realize they want to talk about other things. art is a real big thing with hip hoppers. I don't know, because it's an investment. They'll talk to you about art and artists, and it's fascinating to see how really smart they are on those things. And then some things, that you think they would really weigh in on with a lot of information. Nothing. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know what inspired that song. It's like, yeah, but get them going on some other track, and you've got a conversation. Going back to Baby Reindeer, an interesting look at a different kind of, and I think it's relatable for us because he's not on that high level. If you suddenly had a big star playing this role as a big star, you go, well, so what? It's the price of fame. That's what you're paying for. But this is somebody who has to go work a job and then is like couch surfing all over the place. And then you realize that there's more to his background, that you're so worried about her background that you don't realize he might have some baggage too. Finish that one up.
Yeah.
But you were already, last week you were telling us that you were going to see The Acolyte.
Yes, I did.
And you're a big Star Wars fan.
I am. Yeah.
So out of the goodness of my heart,
okay,
I watched 2 episodes of this Acolyte.
Okay.
Where is this crap coming from?
Oh boy.
Terry, come on. It looked like it was filmed at a theme park. They shut down Disney World for a couple of hours, and then they went in there and did a few episodes, because it's real. It looks stagey, not like Star Wars, the original films. Those looked, at least it looked like they were trying to use locations and things like that. Whereas this, I don't think they get out of this little Ren fair that they're in. And I'm not sure, I don't know where any of these places are. I don't know who any of these people are. I know that 2 guys look like they should be in a boy band.
Yeah, I can see that.
There's a couple of twins, right?
Right.
That's kind of the crux of this story. So, all right, how far away is this from the original Star Wars?
Well, this is quite a distance. So this is taking place about 100 years prior to the stories that we're familiar with, the Skywalker saga. So, I don't know if at some point Yoda, a younger Yoda, is going to show up and kind of stroll through, because that dude was 800 plus years old in the trilogy. But it takes place kind of, at the height of the Jedi Order and before the fall of things under the Empire. I agree that I think some of the production value is not as strong as it would be in the movies, but I also think that, having watched a lot of these shows like Ahsoka and The Mandalorian, I think all of them suffer, because I think when you're producing for TV, it's different than producing for a movie. So I'm kind of curious, once they finally do this Mandalorian movie that's being talked about in a couple of years, what the production value is going to look like on that compared to the series. So I'm with you to that end. I think it's an interesting story, and I think so far it's got me hooked. It's an interesting one from I'm seeing very mixed fan reactions. Like, it's from the critics, it's a 90% on the tomato meter from Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score 26%, but this is also, it's a very polarized, I guess, fan base that's either all in, and they've been known to just kind of tank scores on Rotten Tomatoes. Like that second of the newer trilogy that came out in the last 10 years, the fan base pretty much tanked the second movie. Not in the movie's defense, it wasn't a great one, but it was certainly better than the fan score. So I'm giving this one time. I think it's going to be okay.
It looks like it has kind of a Star Trek sensibility, not a Star Wars sensibility. The other thing I found interesting was it's very integrated. And then you get to the Star Wars films that this is supposedly leading up to, and it's like so white, it's ridiculous. So was there a better kind of interaction back 100 years before, and then something happens? I don't know that they really connect the dots before you get to the masterpiece, or whatever you want to call the main trilogy. There was a lot of martial arts like moves, which reminded me of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And I thought that are they doing this? And this is just me asking, because they want to reach a large Asian audience. I know that that's a great market for shows like this, and Disney in particular is courting that market like crazy. I couldn't quite figure out how that played with the timeline. And so now it's a country that we go to, and that's, different. I don't know.
What I do know is that in the newer trilogies, where it looks like, stiff people sword fighting, supposedly that has to do with, of course, the Jedi were wiped out, so they were less skilled. If you watch some of the when they did the prequel trilogy and they had the actors going through their training, they had martial artists working with them on their lightsaber fighting. So it was supposed to be much more sophisticated. So I think that that's intentional from that standpoint. Whether or not that's also done as a way to maybe play into additional markets, who knows? But yeah, I mean, they're looking for a global audience. Disney is. It's not meant just for an American audience.
Have you heard of any of these characters?
So this is where it gets a little interesting. Me personally, no, I'm not familiar with any of these characters. But what happened was in the 1990s, a number of authors, science fiction authors, started doing novelizations, and trying. It's kind of like Star Trek, where there were tons of novels that kind of came out alongside the TV show, telling different stories. And there was 3 in particular that were really, really good, that a lot of people thought they were actually going to turn into movies because they took place immediately after Return of the Jedi. They were written by Timothy Zahn. But what happened is, once Disney bought Star Wars, all of those books, and then there was probably hundreds of Star Wars novels written in the last 30 years. And what they did is they said the movies are canon, there's a few other things that are canon, but everything else is never really happened. It's called Legends. So what they've been doing is that with some of those characters from some of those books that were popular, they've been adding them to the series. So for instance, in Ahsoka and also Star Wars Rebels, the cartoon series, you have Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn was somebody that came up in those initial Timothy Zahn novels of the 1990s. So he was such a fan favorite that they added him. He went from Legends then back to canon. So it's very likely that some of these characters that are in this show now, if you read all of the Star Wars books over the years, you would probably recognize some names.
Okay, well then, do we have any sense of who's good and who's bad at this? I noticed they didn't even do that same kind of in a galaxy far, far away kind of sweet beginning. It's just kind of, we're throwing it up there. It's good enough. This is another story.
Yeah, no, I don't know where this is going. I mean, it's for me personally, I kind of stopped reading those novels in the late 90s, so I don't know enough about them.
Is this meant as a one-time thing, or could it be ongoing?
I think it's supposed to be multiple seasons, but I don't know if it'll be more than 1 or 2. It'll come down to how the fan reaction is. And not to give anything, we want to keep this spoiler free, but we'll just say the first 2 minutes of the season, episode 1, season 1, took a turn that was pretty much unexpected to me and probably a lot of people tuning in. So they hit you hard at the cold open, and kind of leave it up to the imagination from there.
You were a big fan of The Mandalorian, and I thought those looked great. Do you realize how much do you think a Mandalorian helmet is valued at? There is one on auction right now, and it's sitting at a certain price. How much do you think that is?
$60,000.
10.
10?
10, but it's not closed, so we'll see.
Okay.
You see how that got that kind of buy-in, that I don't know that this is yet anywhere near that you'd want something from it. And that she has this one character has a little droidish thing on her side. What are those?
I have no idea. It's new.
It's
a little droid.
It's like a pocket radio? What are you got there?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Sidekick.
You think, what does it say? So maybe I'm a little too stupid in the world of Star Wars, and I just don't know what the whole thing is. but it's not one that I really feel I need to delve into, because then it's opening Pandora's box. You're cracking another, I need to know this and I need to know that. It's like video games. I don't know that I need to do them.
This is definitely a series which I don't know what Disney's thinking, what their long-term strategy is with Star Wars, because it's with a lot of things. At this point, you take it in whatever direction you want, right? It's not like comic book movies. They can just keep basing things off of comic books, right? You can kind of tell stories that way. In this case, it's kind of a blank canvas and you can do whatever you want. I think there's a certain segment of the population that will, and this goes for me, will consume whatever you give me for Star Wars, and I'll probably enjoy it in most cases. And then I think there's another group of people that they're just not into it. And if you go too far off of the Star Wars of the Skywalker aspect of it, you're just going to lose audience because people aren't going to be like, that's not, I want to see the Ewoks again, or I want to see, Darth Vader's great grandson, or whatever it is. But that's like anything else. If you're a music fan, there's people that just need a greatest hits album, and then there's somebody that needs like the full catalog. So, it's where do you fall in that, right? That's kind of how you can go.
I was listening to some of the things that at one point somebody says, let it go. And I thought, they've been watching Frozen. This is what happened. And then there are two female characters who are, can I say that they're related?
Sure.
And I thought, it's Parent Trap. They've copied the Parent Trap story.
Yeah.
So, they're just little things. They must be like, let's lean into our own IP and let's see what we can do with this, because, hey, we're in clear sailing. It's like they called legal and said, okay, what can we do here? Parent Trap. I think we need to do a little Parent Trap sub-theme. It'll be great. You'll give it a chance beyond the first two episodes.
I think it's, I think the fan base that's tanking its score on Rotten Tomatoes is missing something. I think this is a good series. I don't think it's a great series. But I do think the nice thing with Star Wars, and this is where I really love the Andor story, is it's good to kind of get away from that central theme of Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, those characters. I think it's good to kind of expand. This is a very big universe. It's right. It's just like the world we live in. Let's tell some other stories.
Who don't care at all about the Jedi or any of those people, where you go, it's those Jedi, let them go. They're just a little too much. They're anti-Jedi, and they're hanging banners up or something. It'd be interesting to see that side of it, but maybe I go too far. I've told you this before. I always want to see who has to do the cleanup after the Marvel Avengers have been there, because they're breaking buildings and everything like crazy. But who's the insurance adjuster who has to go in and figure out how much did this cost and who's paying for it? Back to the TCA Awards. They listed 6 ones for Program of the Year. Tell me if you think these belong in there. We have our baby Reindeer.
Yep.
The Bear. Remember that one, the restaurant show?
Love The Bear.
Hacks, the one with Gene Smart.
Haven't watched it. I know you're a fan of it, though, right?
Love it. And the new season is really good. Reservation Dogs, which just ended its run. That's right. Race set on the reservation. Ripley, which is the talented Mr. Ripley turned into a black and white miniseries.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yep.
And then Shogun. Those are what they consider the Program of the Year. Would you pick one of those, or are there others?
No, I think those are all real solid options. I mean, I haven't seen Ripley, I haven't seen Reservation Dogs, and I haven't seen Hacks, but obviously they're well regarded. I love The Bear, and for me, I would have a hard time putting anything above it. Shogun, I've been watching it. It's funny. I've started watching it months ago, and then I kind of put it down for a bit. This isn't a critique of the show itself, because I think it is a good show. It feels a little bit long, like it. You're telling a 10-episode story that could maybe be 6, and I would have been maybe a little better of it. But the problem is a lot of my TV watching happens at between like 9 and 11 at night, when I'm not exactly
reading.
Right. And reading the subtitles is a challenge. So I wish I really respect the use. Anytime a show uses subtitles, I respect it a lot for doing that to kind of keep the authenticity there. But just for me personally, it's really hard to follow along when my eyelids can't stay open. So I do absolutely plan to finish it. But as I said, The Bear is just a top program for me, and Baby Reindeer is very difficult to stop watching.
Yeah, well, and The Bear had that big Christmas episode with Jamie
Yep.
Lee Curtis, which I think is going to be a huge, huge Emmy
Right.
when that time comes,
Yeah.
because that was like the guest performance of all time. That's how
Yeah.
good. So to ignore that, I think would be difficult. And this is the third season of Hacks that would be referenced.
Okay.
And then Reservation Dogs is the end of it. When you look at those, it's Baby Reindeer, Ripley, and Shogun are really the newcomers. And I think out of that three, Ripley was so creative visually that I don't know how you ignore it.
Yeah.
And Shogun has another shot because it's another season coming up.
Yeah. Wow. There you go. But it's interesting, the network tally that I'm looking at, like FX has 16 nominations.
But FX is always good.
Yeah. I mean, you think about like with Fargo, how good that is, and
And
The
that's on the
Bear, and
list for drama, outstanding miniseries and movies. There was an individual one for Juno Temple from Fargo. Oh, there's a lot for that too.
yeah, I mean, it's really the story of FX, Netflix, and HBO.
FX had John Landgraf, who is just a marvel as an executive because he's always looking at something that isn't familiar. And he gives these kind of creators the rope they need to really try something different. And FX is always a big award winner in a lot of these competitions because it does take chances. Whereas you look at the networks, and the networks now, this next year, there are so few new series that it's a lot of game shows, reality shows, sporting events, and series almost don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, network TV is kind of dead. I mean, it's I don't know any other way to say it, but I mean, I don't. There's not a show on ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox that I regularly watch anymore. There's a few that I'll pick up every once in a while. I think I have season 2 of Night Court, the rebooted one, still on the DVR that I'll maybe go back and watch at some point. But man, there's nothing. I watch. It's just Netflix and Hulu and HBO and Disney Plus.
But look at how, with these shorter orders, you can kind of complete it in a weekend.
Right. Yeah.
And when you're having the series where it's one new episode a week for 20 weeks, you're going to miss something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times too, even with the shows that release things kind of, because a lot of the Hulu programs, they'll do an episode a week, kind of like traditional TV did. But a lot of times with those, we just kind of let them compile and then watch it after. So we watched really in the last few weeks, we did Under the Bridge on Hulu. We did The Veil on Hulu. And then right now we're doing the third season of Bridgerton. And then, I'm kind of on the side watching Baby Reindeer. And then Netflix also has that show Eric that just dropped too that looks kind of interesting.
You know what? I started watching Eric, and I it was too depressing for me. And I realized that what I look for out of television is something to pull me out of those things.
Sure.
So I watched Baby Reindeer. That makes real sense, doesn't it?
That helps, right?
But yeah, it's just different things. And I will go back to the old series and watch them on some of the streaming services because it does pull you out of the situation that you might not want to be in.
Maybe I'll bring this up to close this out. The big show is coming out this weekend, and you know what that is.
What's that?
Season 2, House of the Dragon.
Been there, done that.
Oh, have you watched it? Have you
Been there, done that.
Oh boy.
I can't say anything. Did interviews too for it.
Oh, do you think it might be something we'll talk about in the near future?
Could we could, yes.
Okay. But that is something like when we're talking about shows, because I do feel like HBO, to me, I've been such a long time viewer and consumer of HBO content. It feels like in the last year, things have kind of dried up a little bit with them because a number of their series have wrapped, and House of the Dragon came out a year or so, whatever, season 1 came out a year or two ago, and that thing was good, and I am pumped for season 2.
Let me just say there are more dragons this year.
Oh. Well, if you're going to call a show House of the Dragon, you better have...
Yeah, we can't just have one.
Right.
Then the poor old dragon limps in and
right.
Hey, now's my big scene.
Yeah. All
no,
right.
Yeah, you'll be interested, and some of the characters are interesting and twists and turns.
Okay, so we'll be waiting on. Did you vote yet for the TCA?
No, I haven't
Award?
voted on these yet. Haven't voted on these few, but haven't yet.
Okay, well, maybe in a couple weeks we'll follow up with you, and kind of we'll see like who you voted for, and we'll see how the shows did, and if you prognosticated correctly. And
I had not seen Baby Reindeer, and I wanted to see that before I even started tallying in some of these categories. And there are other ones. I also belong to the Critics' Choice Awards, and there are nominations coming out with all of that too that are fascinating.
Okay, all right. Well, we will we'll check in more on that soon, and we'll be back again next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.
Ah, the sizzle of McDonald's sausage. It's enough to make you crave your favorite breakfasts. Enough to head over to McDonald's. Enough to make you really wish this commercial were scratch and sniff.
And if you're a sausage person, now get 2 satisfyingly savory sausage McGriddles, sausage biscuits, or sausage burritos for just $3.33. Or mix and match. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
With the Planet Fitness Black Card, you don't just get a great workout, you get a great perk out because your membership is packed with perks. For zero enrollment and $24.99 a month, you'll get perks like access to any of our 2,400 clean and spacious locations. Bring a friend anytime and both work out with tons of equipment that'll give you that big fitness energy. Relax in the Black Card spa and more. Work out and perk out with the PF Black Card. Join today for zero enrollment and $24.99 a month. See Home Club for details.